Welcome to Work Savvy, and thank you for joining us for another dose of inspiration and insights on leadership and self-mastery. I'm Karen Gately, the founder of Corporate Dojo, and joining me is my co-host Madeline Cook.
Thanks, Karen. So on the show today, we're going to kick off talking all about high-performing teams.
And to help us unpack this topic, we're joined by Pete Clark, who has joined us before. So very happy to have you back. Pete is a leadership and mindset coach and the founder of 21 Whispers.
Pete, welcome back to Work Savvy, and thanks for being here.
Thanks, Mads and Karen. Pleased to be here and looking forward to chatting to you both and your listeners about a topic very close to my heart.
Yes, we knew it was, hence why we thought let's grab Pete for this one. Certainly know that you do a lot of work in this space, and you and I have a lot of aligned views on this space as well, I'm aware. So let's dive straight into it. What do you think it takes to get a group of people to be a great team?
Lots.
Yeah, lots. Exactly. It's just a small question.
Lots, right? And I'm coming from the perspective, slightly off piece for a second. You know, when people ask us in our field, how long does it take to create a habit? And there's this myth that it's 21 days, all that rubbish. And, some research has been done to suggest it's between, 66 and 200 odd days. The best answer I've read about how long it takes to create a habit is forever.
Yeah.
Meaning, if you stop brushing your teeth, which you would assume is a habit, and you stop doing it, it's no longer a habit. Right, so you've got to keep doing it, right? If you stop showering, which we'd assume is a habit, and you no longer did it, it's no longer a habit. So with this answer of what does it take to become a high-performing team? Lots. If you stop doing all these things, then it becomes you're no longer maximizing and optimizing your team. So all of these things we're going to talk about, you've got to keep doing the work.
And you know what I love about your opening comments here is that some of those habits like brushing teeth and showering, there is typically an external motivating force to make sure that we maintain that habit. So, people will soon start to step right back from us because we're no longer hygienic and pleasant to be around. So, there's a degree of being motivated to do it because of those external factors. Whereas things like having a habit around deliberately influencing the success of our team, sometimes the motivation doesn't come until something really goes wrong, and all of a sudden there is a big external force that says, no, now you really need to get this together. So it does take a lot of internal discipline to step into that role as a leader and go, this is my ongoing mission, is to optimize the extent to which this group of human beings are effective.
Yeah, totally. And look, that's something I would raise, straight up, that often when there's a crisis, people come together naturally. We're recording this in Australia, way back 3 years ago now, nearly, we had all the bushfire tragedies. And it's amazing when there's a tragedy and such a catastrophic thing like that, how many people come together without an Outlook diary invitation, without a necessarily designated team leader, but they'll come together in a crisis. And when the crisis dissipates, they fall back into old singular individual habits, which I find fascinating. So as one of the premises around building and creating a high-performing team, it's having this, not an urgent, always catastrophic mindset, but the value of 1 + 1 = more than 2.
Yeah.
And almost everyone, I'm guessing, Karen, like me, that we speak to, when we ask that question intellectually, do you believe 1 + 1 = more than 2? Everyone says yes.
Yeah.
But I'm not sure necessarily they're willing to do often unseen work to make it happen. So they're not willing to manifest the glue, do the stuff behind the scenes to create a fertile environment for this group of people to come together with a singular, clear purpose.
Yeah, absolutely. So what does that look like? If I'm a leader, what's the work I should be doing on an ongoing basis?
Well, so when I do work with teams, I often start by asking people the question, have you been in a high-performing team before? And I do wonder whether some people's version of a high-performing team is actually high-performing.
Yeah.
It might have been the best team they've ever been part of, which we can still reflect on their experience. But I wonder how high performing it was, because high performing for me is a little bit of context and comparison. If I've played Sunday League football and I'm now going to transfer to the A League or the Premier League in England, that's a very different standard of what high performing means.
Yeah.
And so taking that in mind, I often ask, well, I give them the definition that I use of a high performing team, which is simply, it's a small number of people, usually 7 to 8. Any more you get diminishing returns, with complementary or synergistic subject matter expertise, skills, and mindset, who are wholly committed and countable to a way of working together in pursuit of a common cause. Now, you unpack all of that, there's a number of components in that when you look at the bushfires, that happened naturally and organically because of the crisis.
Mm.
So those are the same components that for me make up a high performing team in a corporate sense. Small number of people, complementary skills and mindsets, 100% committed and countable to a way of working together in pursuit of a common cause.
Mm. I think that's a brilliant definition. And when I reflect on some of the teams that I've worked with over time that are struggling to be effective, I think that unification of what is our purpose. Sometimes the work I'm doing with the team as a starting point is to really clearly articulate what's our job. What do we want our job to be in this organisation? What impact do we want to have? What reputation do we want to build? And then how do we actually collectively make that happen? So, when you can actually get people on that same page that, okay, we're ultimately in the same boat, heading in the same direction, we've got that shared purpose, then we can start to articulate, well, what's it actually going to take for us as individuals to behave in ways that are aligned with that collective purpose and that collective mission. And I think there's two things you've said in there that are key, is that full engagement, that sincere commitment to being a part of that team and driving it, and then the accountability around that. I think all too often leaders fail to address some of the derailers in the team, some of the people who do have an individualistic mindset or are undermining that team cohesion and effectiveness. And they might be a strong SME and they might be somebody that does bring a degree of value, but there's not enough focus on relative to the whole team's success and ultimately what that team's striving to achieve.
And I'll make a small distinction, Karen, between accountable and countable.
Yeah.
My preference, my belief and my experience is accountable is the words that are used, but often that's fear driven and punishment driven. And again, you could argue the only thing that we're really accountable to is the law.
Yeah.
Whereas in the highest performing teams I've worked with and been part of, there's no need for accountability.
Yeah.
Because everyone's countable. Everyone's kind of going, yep, I'm in. I've got my hand up. I'm fully on board here. I, as the leader, don't need to create an accountability framework because everyone's in.
Yeah. They're taking ownership.
They're taking ownership without being asked to, when are you going to do that by, Pete? It's Pete going, nope, that'll be done by the end of play today, and I'll have this done by then. And if I don't, there's usually a very good reason, and there's outliers to it as well. But there isn't an accountability issue in the highest performing teams.
Yeah, agree. And when I think about accountability in the coaching I give leaders, to your point around, it shouldn't just be around the punishment. Because often we do think, okay, if I'm holding someone accountable, I'm punishing them for something there's an imposed consequence. Whereas I think just as important is that accountability needs to be both the reward, the recognition, the acknowledgement of what we want. So in other words, there's actually an outcome or a consequence for that standard of contribution or the approaches that have been taken. So we're saying thank you to people for taking those rights approaches. We're holding up as a great example of a team member those who are working towards our collective success. So there's that balance between patting people on the back, reinforcing what we want, and then obviously sometimes there are remedial steps that we need to take. if people are not stepping into their role, if there's not that sense of ownership. And again, the ownership needs to be not just for my own patch and my own individual job or little square of the oval that I'm responsible for. It's the overall team's success. And I just don't think we're serious about that enough.
Yep. Because in being accountable for the team success, I have to let a little bit of my own success potentially go.
Yeah,
And the
that's right.
benefit of, the collective goal is worth more to me than the individual goal. And sometimes you hear it on TV interviews with sports teams. You'll say, the top goal scorer or the top try scorer, whoever scored the most behinds, whatever it is, will say, it doesn't matter how I performed, it's how the team performs.
Yeah.
And there is a little bit of research, certainly in the Soccer World Cup, to suggest that the highest goal scorer at the Soccer World Cup is rarely part of the winning team.
Yeah. And I can understand why, because I think, again, if we continue with that sporting analogy, some of the greatest contributors to the team are those who are setting up other players to take the best
Right.
shots. So rather than hogging the ball, if we can put it that simplistically,
Yeah.
they're actually, setting things up so that somebody else can come along and ultimately score the point.
And that's often work that's done unseen and unrecognized and unrewarded.
Yeah.
Hence why for humans that's quite difficult to do. If I'm constantly doing that work that's not seen, recognized, and rewarded, after a time, I'm probably not going to do it so much.
Yeah.
So the team leader recognizing that some of the work's done that's seen, but a lot of work is done unseen. How do you ensure that that work that's unseen is seen, recognized, and rewarded?
Absolutely. So to put it in simple terms, when somebody genuinely does take one for the team, there's a degree of self-sacrifice, arguably, in order to achieve the team's objective. That is held up as a great example of something that we do want, and that we do. Again, I think it comes back to the way. If I think about some of the indicators of a great team or a great team player versus somebody who's not, sharing in credit, uplifting our colleagues, pushing other people forward to take the credit and stepping back in certain moments. Those are all of they're examples of those selfless acts that mean that the whole team is more likely to win at the end of the day.
Yeah. Again, assuming they believe that 1 + 1 equals more than 2, which, we would tend to believe. And there's going to be situations where the individual contributor probably will perform better than some.
Yeah.
And yet, more often than not, I think that the collaborative effort, the team effort is likely over the longer term to produce more.
Totally. And where my mind's going to now is that if you think about why do so-called high performers leave an organization, often one of the reasons behind that is because they are tired of carrying the load unfairly for those who aren't stepping up. So when leaders fail to address the person who's, the anchor off the back of the team boat, allow them to fly under that radar of accountability and minimize their contribution, that has consequences for other team members.
Totally.
And, great team members, great team performers typically want to be in a winning team environment where everybody is stepping up, everybody is playing their role. And as you said at the beginning of this conversation, genuinely signed up, they're accountable, they're genuinely committed to us as a team being successful.
And just in that vein, Karen, one of the habits that I see, sadly, in team leaders predominantly, but also in teams, is everybody knows someone's not performing.
Yeah.
Everybody knows someone's the anchor in the team. Everyone knows, for whatever reason, good, bad, or indifferent, that someone, is probably not best to be here. The leader that says, "I wish I'd left that decision to move them along for longer," said no one.
Yeah. I was wondering where
That is
you were going with that.
always a decision you're going, "Oh, bugger, I should have made that decision quicker." Because
Yeah.
they've known for so long and everybody else knows it. And it's like, once the decision is made, you can see a collective shoulders drop, right?
Yeah.
The energy is different. And it's amazing
Yeah.
how one person, one energy source in a team is energizing or depleting.
Yeah,
It's so
absolutely.
obvious.
I often ask people, have you ever worked with someone that just sucks the life force out of you because they're near you?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
most people's response to that is, yeah,
Yes.
I've been there,
Yeah.
And the conversation I have with leaders is you need to have an opinion around what impact are people having on the collective spirit of the team. So how much energy do we collectively have in reserve that is essential to us thinking, feeling, and behaving in ways that are successful? And to not recognize those big drainers can be fatal to a team. People start to become drained themselves, their own mindsets become pessimistic, or their own behaviors start to deteriorate. They start to be defensive or aggressive or whatever it looks like. But when we do actually remove that draining source, as you pointed out, suddenly the team spirit can shift. We've actually reached a position where we can re-energize and get back to a place of confidence or hopefulness or
Yep.
collaboration, whatever it is.
Mm.
And again, I see far too often that the reason we're not addressing that issue is because it feels too hard. If I actually extract that person from the team, we're going to lose important corporate knowledge, or they're a critical SME, it's hard to replace them. And, but at the same time, if you think again about the team spirit, it's
Yeah.
a bit like allowing something to stay that is, deflating your tires every day and then still expecting that the team are going to win the race.
Yep. One of the exercises that at the right time with a team I love to do is it's kind of a live feedback session where it's amongst all of the team members. What does Pete do that boosts the energy of the team, and what does Pete do that deflates the energy of the team?
Yeah.
And for everyone to have that live conversation, eyeballing each other in the same room at the right time, of course,
Yeah.
it's something that can be really, really helpful.
Yeah. Yeah.
Confronting, but helpful.
Yeah, and I do a similar exercise with people. I use a profiling tool often called TMS, which looks at people's work styles and preferences. And in those workshops, often what I'll do is I'll get people to reflect for themselves. What strengths do I bring to the team? But when I'm in hyperdrive and my style is exaggerated, what might I be doing that is a drainer or undermines my own success or the success of the team? And what I find is, because we're all doing this and we're all talking about, it's human and normal for us to be less than perfect. So, there's likely to be something on everybody's list. And it's a safe, respectful environment within which we're having the conversation. The overwhelming majority of people will be really honest about that. We'll actually be very real about it.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, well, I'm the results girl. I just want to get things done. I want to get it done yesterday. Sometimes I run out of patience. I can be really demanding. I understand that can, create tension in the team. So again, when we have that, let's all own our stuff. We're not perfect, but at the same time, let's all take ownership for what impact are we having on ourselves, on one another, and ultimately our collective success. Then again, we're more likely to navigate those moments. We've got some self-awareness, but we've also got some honest acknowledgement as a team that all of us are going to have moments where we're not at our best. How are we going to deal with that when that happens?
Yeah, look, I would agree, Karen. And the addition I would make is I think the self-awareness part is maybe 50% of it. Because usually it's the other people that determine how I land on them more than I can. I might know that when I'm under pressure, I get a bit grumpy and I get a bit task orientated. So forgive me, I'm going to be direct with you when I'm grumpy and tired and pissed off. How that lands on other people is their interpretation, which might be more than I am aware of. And I'd suggest
Yeah.
often it is because that's part of their stuff. They're
Yeah.
interpreting the meaning behind the communication, which is affecting their identity, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So
Yeah.
yes, the self-awareness part, but also how does that land on you? What is it like to be with me? How do I
Yeah.
land on you? That answer can be really revealing for both parties.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that speaks directly to that role of coach and the conversations that leaders also need to have at times to help people to build that understanding of what
Yeah.
is that impact. I often talk about the unconscious bully, the person that just behaves the way that they behave. They don't necessarily have a deliberate intention to bully, but the impact of their actions is absolutely, in anyone's book, is bullying. And, often when you help them to actually see that, when they can empathize with that impact, how they are experienced by other people, it can be quite an emotional experience for people to realize, wow, that's who I am. That's how people experience me. That's the impact I have. And I found that to be the most powerful way of shifting some of those behaviors, is to help them to see why it matters in real terms. This is what it's like to hang out with you, as you were just pointing out.
One of the questions that if a party, if it's two people or a team, are willing to confront themselves with it and be, genuine and honest and listen to the responses, one of the most powerful questions that I've seen asked is for the team leader or anyone in the team to say, what's it like to be on the receiving end of me?
Yeah.
And if people are willing to listen and absorb and sit with the responses, God, that can be such a powerful moment that actually brings the team together.
Yeah.
Because that's probably
Absolutely.
not an easy answer.
You've taken me to a conversation with my son the other day, actually, because he was hanging out with this young woman who, what he observed in her was very similar behaviours to the way he is. So what Cal does is he gets super excited about something, and he's a scientist and a philosopher, and he's, intellectually really bright, but just loves to teach and loves to tell you all about it. And when I say all about it, I mean all about it. And he said to me the other day, he said, I was hanging out with so-and-so and she got really passionate about this topic and she was talking about it and talking about it and talking about it. He goes, and I suddenly thought to myself, wow, this must be what mum feels like when I want to roll. Because there have been so many times, in his life where I've said to him, Cal, this is really genuinely really interesting to me, but is it going to come to an end soon? Because we've been talking about this for quite some time. But the moral story being is that, he could see himself in this young woman and, took his own mind to, wow, that's what it must be like to hang out with me, and I'm really proud of the fact that he could see it, take ownership for it, have a giggle about it, but also own it. And then the very next day he started to tell me or the very next hour, in fact, he started to tell me another story. And I could actually see this shift in, he kept it short, he just shared the information and moved on. So yeah, that's where my mind went talking about that. So, what are some of the solutions? So what I'm hearing is that's make sure that we are influencing people to be on the same page, to have that shared ownership, to fully be accountable, as you put it, and to understand their influence and their impact, to address those issues or those drainers when they come up. What are the strategies? What are some of the things that leaders can do to make sure that, we're helping teams to be more collaborative?
So a couple of things. Well, 7 to be precise. I've made some notes. The first of which is making sure everyone pre, during, and post is clear about the context they're operating in. So is it a revenue generating context? Is it an expense context? Is it a startup context? Is it a new strategy context? Whatever the context is, because context can change our behavior quickly if we're aware of it. So everyone's really clear about where we've come from, where we're at, and where we're going context wise. What's the market doing? What's our organization doing? Have we just gone through a restructure, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera? That'd be the first thing. The second thing, it would then be clarity on a number of things like purpose, vision, strategy, ways of working. Is where we sit in our marketplace clear? Is my contribution and my role clear within this team? Do we have a team purpose? Do we need a team purpose? Do we need to even be a team? Or can we operate just as a working group? So the clarity around that. And a bit like you, Karen, I often get asked to do team sessions and team alignment sessions. And the two most important things I always get asked to help them with, one is clarity on whatever they need clarity on. And the second thing, which is the third thing here, is connection. So connecting with each other, head, heart, gut, and soul. And even if you know each other, there's still other ways in which you can connect. So I understand what's bothering you, and you understand what excites me, and you understand what pisses Mads off, and so on and so on. So it's that connection beyond the head level. That would be the third one. The
I
fourth
don't think
thing
anything
is
pisses you off, does it, Mads?
I'll think about it and get back to you.
Yeah, thanks. She's pretty easygoing.
the fourth thing is the one we just talked about a lot, Karen, about accountability.
Yeah.
This reframe on accountability where it's more positive, more hands up, I'm in, rather than holding someone accountable.
Yeah.
The fifth one is a massive part of what I think gets missed and not enough people pay attention to it is communication. And I
Yeah.
don't just mean the emails and our comms, but when you ask people in most positions, to what extent of the success of your role is down to how well you communicate,
Yeah.
many of them will say 90%, 80%, 70%. A significant part of the success of my role is down to the success and how good I am at communicating. And how often do you practice that? And they don't. So it's like saying the most important part of my game is taking penalty kicks, but I never practice.
Yeah.
That's ridiculous.
Exactly.
Ridiculous.
And where my mind's gone is that, I think that not all, but a lot of human beings are really poor communicators. I think it's something that is really challenging for us to master.
Yeah.
And one of the reasons around that is our emotional intelligence,
Yep.
And being able to move past some of the insecurities or the emotions generally that allow us to communicate clearly, constructively, remain open-minded, keep listening, maintain empathy. So we think about communication in organizations often about, well, did I tell you? Did I share that information? But what's often lacking is, did we actually engage in really helpful, robust, healthy dialogue and conversation? And I think, mastering that art of a really powerful conversation is one of the most important things that we need to do in teams and in business more broadly, in life more broadly.
You and I have been doing this for a number of years, and every single time I ask a group of people or a team, what are the key issues and challenges that you face? I guarantee you within the top three, it's some sort of communication.
Yeah. Well, I often point to the fact that every single staff survey I have ever done, maybe that's a slight exaggeration, the overwhelming majority of staff surveys I've ever done, there are two things people say need to improve. One is remuneration,
Yeah.
and the other is communication.
Yeah.
Almost without exception.
And I think there's an art to that. I think leaders assume that too literally. Oh, well, I need to tell you more stuff.
Yeah, that's right.
But I've already told you, it's far more, far broader than that.
Yeah.
And then just to finish the 7, Karen, there's contribution. And what I mean by contribution is, and I look at this in a relationship as well, that, if any of you have been married, any number of times, and you take the vows, I'll look after you if you look after me. That's a very dependent situation.
Yeah.
Whereas what if it was, I'll look after me for you as long as you look after you for me?
Yeah.
There's a different level of ownership there. So I think contribution at a team level is, I'll look after me for us as long as you look after you for us.
Yeah.
And so that's me dealing with my own self-care. It's me dealing with my own work-life balance. It's me dealing with all the stuff I'm carrying that I'm bringing into this situation.
Yeah.
How I'm contributing to the team is more than just how I contribute in a meeting.
Yeah.
And that's a significant part of it. The final one is the kind of magic that brings it all together, the kind of fairy dust around culture. That what environment are we creating in this team, in this meeting? What gets then cast out into the organization because of what we're talking about here? And it's rarely direct, it's rarely literal. But the conversation that you and I have in a meeting about a strategy decision actually almost by osmosis filters out into the organization.
Yeah.
Without us even knowing. So that's the things I would say for a leader to really focus on: context, clarity, connection, accountability, communication, contribution, and culture.
Love it.
Easy as that.
Easy. Voila. Off you
Forever.
go.
It's so
Forever.
easy.
That's right. And just keep doing it. That's right.
Doing
Keep
it
checking
forever.
it. Yeah. Love
But
it.
that is what I find, Karen, is when a new leader comes in, they will do this stuff.
Yeah.
And then they'll forget.
Yeah.
Or they'll get busy doing the job.
Yeah.
Whereas I know, and you know, and I appreciate, I think that revisiting some of the stuff on a regular, frequent basis is actually what keeps the wheels turning.
Mm. Totally agree. Totally agree. Well, as always, we could literally talk about this all day.
We could,
I
yeah.
feel like we've just hit the surface of everything we can talk about. But Mads, I'm thinking we probably need to move on to our next segment.
Yeah, I reckon it's about that time. So next up, we've got our Mojo in the Dojo segment.
Mojo. The libido, the life force, the essence, the right stuff. What the French call a certain... I don't know what.
Which is all about energy, confidence, and influence. So, Karen, what have we got today?
So today we're talking about maintaining your mojo when you are stuck in a rut.
Another big one.
Yeah, exactly. What's your immediate thoughts on that, Pete?
One would be to recognize it, which again, assuming someone does, that they recognize they were stuck in a little bit of a rut. A couple of things I would suggest is, one is probably to get outside.
Yeah.
Right. Nature has a way of healing, of re-energizing, of doing stuff to us, whether it's, kicking off your shoes and paddling in the sea, or walking the dogs, or going for a walk in the, whatever it might be.
Yeah.
It's getting outside that can often be a bit of a circuit breaker.
Yeah.
The second thing would be to do something novel.
Yeah.
Do something perhaps you haven't done before. Go and paint on a canvas. You don't have to be a painter to do it. Go and sell the big issue. Go and knit. Go and crochet things. Something that you might have never done before as a circuit breaker to kind of break the rut. Because the idea, if you keep going, it becomes the coffin.
Yeah.
And so,
That's
getting
right.
outside, doing something novel. And the third thing, probably, as I've heard many times, one of the best ways to get out of a rut, of your own rut, is to help someone else.
Yeah.
Go and do something for someone else. So we take it out of our own issue and we actually get and feel better by helping someone else. Buy them a coffee. Give someone on the street a beanie. Something ridiculous.
For our listeners, Pete's referring to a conversation we had before the start of the podcast around my desire. I've suddenly become obsessive about crocheting and planning to crochet beanies for homeless people. And, I think you're absolutely right. I think that points to feeling that sense of purpose. So in my world, the crocheting is a way to just get completely outside of anything that's stressful, outside of anything that's mundane, be in my own little happy place. It feels like active meditation. But then there's also something that I'm creating that I'm proud of, that I think is beautiful. And then obviously handing out beanies again feels like giving back, having a sense of purpose. And for me, I think about, okay, well, what do we mean by being in a rut? And for me, it's been stuck on that treadmill of life, or we're in the hamster wheel, right? We're just going round and round and round. We're just doing the same things. And what we've lost is that spark, those things that give us joy, those things that energize us, or, hit us on a soul level, where we actually feel like life is going places. I'm actually moving forward, or I feel that there is real meaning to this, that I'm making a contribution. So when we find ourselves in that space, I think, as you've said, one of the things we can do is step back, recognize, okay, that's where I'm at, and then make a conscious choice to step off that hamster wheel. And to do that, it's about, well, how am I going to invest my focus, my time, and my energy in ways that give me something, make me rebuild that sense of vitality and strong spirit again. And, as again, you've accurately pointed out, nature is incredibly powerful, to be able to have sunshine. Clearly, I appreciate that's not always available to us, but just fresh air. There's research that's been done around the positive psychological and physiological impact of even being able to see trees and greenery. That can actually have a very real influence on how we're feeling.
Yeah,
my own spirit, for example, is uplifted by the corgi that you all might be able to hear in the background, who suddenly decided to bark in the middle of our podcast.
Yeah.
But, stopping and cuddling the doggos is another way in which I just shake off, okay, I'm in this mundane space, I'm feeling the rut of things, just break away, shift my mind, do something that feels good.
Yeah. Often I think people, when we're in a rut, we start to question what's the purpose, what's the meaning of life. And whilst that's a huge question that philosophers have debated for centuries, the twist I would have on it is, rather than thinking about the meaning of life, what's the meaning within your life?
Yeah.
And that can be really small things. And as an example, some of the work that you and I do, one of the little activities I ask groups to do is to get their phone and send a random text of kindness to a random contact in their phone. That's part of a workshop, and everyone has a little bit of a laugh about it. And within 10 minutes, usually there's a couple of people that have a response. Here's an example of where I've found meaning within.
I'm not laughing at you. I'll explain myself in a moment, Pete. Do go on.
Yeah. So one of the reasons that I've found, here's a snippet of how I've found meaning within my life. I only found out maybe a month ago that 6 months prior, that activity resulted in someone's life being saved.
Oh.
Now, I didn't know, and I don't need to know, but all you need is just that little glimpse of, hang on a minute, I've done that 1,000 times, and I don't know how much impact it's had, but once. And that's all it needs, is that little act, that little random text of stupid kindness, this random contact prevented someone from taking their own life.
Oh.
Stop. I'm going to cry.
I know. And now I can't tell you why I was laughing. No, I can't. What made me laugh, if anyone listening doesn't know who this is, go look him up. But Michael McIntyre is a comedian who I just find ridiculously funny. I went to his live show and we went as a whole family, and we literally laughed, crying laughter from the start to the end of his show. Anyway, one of the things he has done on one of the shows is a segment called Send to All, and he gets a celebrity's phone.
Send to All, yeah.
And he writes this really problematic text
and
then literally sends it to everyone in their contacts list. It is the funniest thing. So if anyone listening hasn't seen that, go look it up on YouTube. It's just a massive laugh.
There you go. There's a little task we can give to your listeners. Grab your phone and go through your contacts, random contact, and just send them a simple, hey mate, checking in, how you doing?
Yeah.
And I was thinking of you and the family. Haven't seen you for a while. Hope all is well. Cheers.
Yeah.
Send them a random text.
They should probably sign it off with their own name, though, Pete.
Yeah, probably, yeah.
Otherwise, it's a bit weird.
That's so nice. Good idea.
It is. All right, where to now?
All right, so last up, we've got our WTF at work.
Say what?
So today's WTF at work is from Reddit. It's a bit of a long one, so bear with me. So it starts off saying, am I the arsehole for speaking a foreign language at my workplace? A new hire at my work told everyone she can speak Hebrew. As it's not very common, I was so excited to meet someone else that could also speak Hebrew. We often chat in Hebrew in the office and on our lunch breaks. I've had 3 separate colleagues calling me out and telling us to stop speaking in a different language because they don't understand it. 2 of them have said, well, we don't know what you're talking about. You could be gossiping about us. I've assured everyone we're not gossiping about anyone. It's just a good way to practice our language skills and feel really connected. I don't think we're doing anything wrong, but am I the arsehole?
I've seen this one come up a lot in workplaces, actually. Yeah. So as always, I've got opinions, but I like to let my guests go first. Pete, what do you think?
It shouldn't be a hard one because I don't think so.
Yeah.
I guess that depends, or if they are gossiping and talking about people in that different, whether it's Hebrew or not, then that might be not as conducive to teaming that we're thinking. But that's a tough one. I wouldn't say so, but I guess it would depend the content.
Yeah,
exactly. And that'd be pretty much my answer as well, is the context of within which it's happening.
Yep.
I think people on both sides of that equation can give a little, empathise a little, allow some space for individuality and I certainly have no problem with people speaking another language around me, so long as that doesn't cause me to feel excluded. So if we, for example, were in a team of 3 people and 2 of those people spent the majority of the day talking another language, then I actually just think that's inconsiderate because it doesn't leave that third person feeling part of the team.
Yep.
But if we're in a team of 10 people and 2 people are speaking another language from time to time throughout the day, then there's zero issue. We don't just have one language either in the world or in our country. I think sometimes in Australia we can have this attitude of, well, English is our language. It's like, well, English is probably the most commonly spoken language, but it's not the only language spoken. It's ridiculous to suggest that it is. So again, it's around courtesy and consideration on both sides, I would say.
Yeah.
So again, so long as these people aren't excluding, as long as they are also participating, that they do have other conversations in languages that other people understand from time to time, and they are connecting with their other colleagues and not creating a subculture within the team, then what's the problem?
Yeah. In fact, it made me think of the original conversation at the beginning of the podcast around teaming. And one thing I see not enough teams doing enough of, when somebody new comes in, giving them a lot of back story to some of the 3-letter acronyms, so some of the in-jokes, to some of the project names. They don't spend enough time allowing those questions to be asked because it slows things down.
Yeah.
And ultimately, it speeds things up because the new people feel more included and they can be part of the banter. They can be part of the shortcut language that's often used as groups of people evolve.
Agree. When I was at Vanguard, I wrote a dictionary for new crew members because the same thing. There were so many industry acronyms, but there were also just business shortcuts. Things that we spoke about and what did it mean. One of the standout examples of that was, rather than talking about employees or staff, we talked about the crew. And what I started to realize is that some people took a while to figure out who we're talking about when we talk about the crew. So some really simple language things that, again, helped people to understand and, sort of feel part of it and not feel so alien. Yeah. The other thing I had to explain to people is that for whatever reason, as a business, we used to clap a lot. So again, I didn't realize until new people would come in and they'd say to me, "What's with all the clapping?" So then I started to give people a heads up that, we have this tendency, we'll be in team meetings and we're like, "Oh yes, let's, clap over that." So again, it was just culturally something that we did. There was a strong desire for us to celebrate and to acknowledge one another and to bring a bit of happiness and celebration or joy into moments that felt super weird and odd to people who had never been in that kind of environment.
Yeah.
So I created a document that said, okay, here's all the things, the usisms, the things that are going to happen in this environment.
Really, I know of a colleague of mine who used to greet everyone with a, "Hey, what's up?" Which is maybe more relevant if you're stateside, maybe not so relevant here, but the compelling response from most people, had they not known, would be to try and answer the question, "Well, nothing. What should there be something up?" And really, it was just his way of going, "Hey, how are you doing?"
Yeah, exactly. And then there's so many, when you talk about, culturally diverse workplaces, there are so many things in terms of the way we use language that can be foreign to one another. One of the things that Australians say that I always just think so funny is, "Yeah, no."
Yeah, nah, yeah.
Yeah. That's like, no wonder people joining our community from offshore are like, "What are you actually saying right now?" But Mads, bringing it back to our WTF at work, I think the WTF in it is the hypersensitivity that the colleagues are having in that scenario. Again, that's assuming that the individuals speaking Hebrew are also being kind and respectful and connecting with their colleagues.
Yeah.
As long as they're doing that, then I don't think there is a problem. And I think other people need to be a little less paranoid, just because it's a different language being spoken. The short version is, it's not all about you.
Yeah.
There are other things to actually talk about, and there are other indications of whether or not you've got good relationships with those people.
Yeah.
It's like maybe they've done something wrong and they think, oh, did they find out why they're talking about it? It's like, well, what have you done to be worried about what everyone else is saying about you?
Exactly.
Yeah.
I've seen some funny TikToks actually where people have gone to a service provider. The service provider hasn't assumed that their client can speak their language, and they've been saying all these really nasty things in front of them about them until they've actually spoken up using the language.
Yeah.
It's like awkward.
And it might not even be Hebrew. I know clients who've had teams where it's predominantly male dominated, and their way of connecting and bantering is through rugby conversations.
Yeah, okay.
And it's not necessarily a gender thing, but it can be where the females don't understand, don't want to, don't play the game, don't know.
Yeah.
So it's almost as exclusive as the language thing. It keeps the same language. It's English.
Yeah.
But because the topic is not there,
I think that's a great
and
point.
that can be as exclusive.
Yeah. It's like it may as well be a foreign language if you don't know anything about it.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I just in those moments like to make stuff up. Start to pretend. I used to do that with my kids when they were teenagers. I'd go and research something they were really passionate about and start to randomly throw it into conversations using all the buzzwords. But they could usually tell that I was using it out of context or whatever it was. But I just enjoy doing it in front of their friends.
Like, I'm cool. I know what this is.
I did it once on a Facebook post with my son. He was into some type of music. I don't know. I think it was death metal or something. So I went and researched all these terms and then responded on a Facebook post about, get jiggy with the tech death met, I think I said. And that was the first time that one of my son's friends declared that I was a cool mum online in writing. So I had the evidence. So
there you go.
Yeah.
That's so funny.
Well, on that note, we have actually run out of time. We could speak to Pete all day, every day, no doubt, and not run out of things to talk about. But Pete, thank you so much for joining us yet again. Remind our listeners, where can they find out more about you and the work that you do?
Yeah, if you check out 21whispers.com, I do a weekly blog, a weekly whisper. I do various podcasts like this. And if you didn't just check that out, you can check me out on LinkedIn, Pete at 21whispers.com. And I look forward to furthering the conversation.
Fantastic. Well, thank you. So to our listeners, if there are any topics you would like us to explore, please get in touch via our website at corporatedojo.com or, of course, any of our social media channels.
Thanks, Karen. Thanks, Pete, for joining us. Thanks, everyone, for listening. We'll see you next time. And don't forget to work savvy.